Melissa. Hey, congratulations on your new film, The List.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
I know it's so happy to talk to you about this film. After all, this is the type of rom-com that we need more of right now. But we have to hear it. Is how what initially drew you to this project, and how were you brought on board?
So I think so again, it was they were kind of boring channels. Like it went through my agency, and I think that a producer on the List team had a good relationship with one of my agents. And there was two male writers, and I think that they were really looking forward to having like a female director to sort of be like the front man, so to speak, on the project. And I think that they had probably sent them a bunch of different directors, and and for whatever reason they looked at my first movie. They could tell I knew how to make a movie, and I think that they liked the idea that I had worked with really great talent. And I knew going into this, they were, they wanted to get some great people for their movie. So I think it was just a good fit. And I think what really clinched it was just, we had an initial conversation with the producers and the writers, and we could just tell that we came from the same place. We had the same sense of humor. I think they really liked my notes that I was giving them, and they liked the direction I wanted to bring the script into. And so we just felt like, making a movie, as everybody knows, is like war sometimes. You just want to make sure you have the right people with you. And I think after having a discussion, we realized that we were going to be a good team, and we could stand to be around each other for the duration of the shoot.
So how did you want to approach for something like this? Rom-coms aren't easy to do. That if it is, a lot of people would be making it, of course.
Yeah, no, rom-coms can easily get away from you. And I think for me, and maybe what sold them on me as a director, is I kind of said to them, like, look, I have a pretty good bullshit meter. So like if something feels false, I can sense it right away. And so I just, again, I think this phrase is used too much, but even though it was a rom-com, I did want it to feel grounded. And at the end of the day, my approach was making it more about being a buddy movie. Like for some reason, when I read it, I thought of Cannonball Run, which like, it's not like Cannonball Run at all. But what made me think of that movie, I think, was just like the forward momentum. That movie had so much momentum to it. And I wanted this movie to have a similar rhythm, that it was like constantly moving forward, and they really were going on these adventures together. And so that was sort of the comparison that I liked to make when I was talking about this movie, because that movie has so much energy, and I wanted this to feel that way as well.
Well, it helps the fact that your backdrop for the stories is sort of a celebrity hall pass. I mean, this
Right, right,
this is,
right.
this is something that how can you say, you could bring in a lot of quirky characters into this film.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think we had the luxury of making them who we wanted them to be. I mean, we were lucky we had Nick Viall in the beginning from The Bachelor. And so I think that kind of set the tone, and he was so great to have on set. And then we were able to sort of play with the other characters, because we could create them, and we could bring these other actors into those roles, and they could really make them what they wanted to make them. And I think each character is different. Like each sort of celebrity she goes after is different in their own way. You have your charming one, you have your sort of like Bruce Willis type. And so, you have all these sort of types that she's going for. And I think people will think that's amusing at how she approaches each one, type of thing.
It is funny that you had Nick Viall from The Bachelor
Yeah.
on onto this, because for such a long time he was struggling to
I know, it's funny because I wasn't as familiar with the franchise as, let's say, Halston Sage, because it was actually her suggestion. And I know that he was a divisive guy for a while, and that people really didn't like him. Then somehow he flipped it, and then everyone started really loving him. And we kept saying, like, well, who are the most popular Bachelor characters. And I think for a while he was kind of a bad guy, but somehow he was able to flip that image. And now he's doing really well with his podcast. And, you know, he's made a name for himself as this like love doctor, which I find interesting. But he was a joy to work with. And, you know, we were joking because he was like, I really think I could have played myself a little better. And, you know, and I was like, when I was brainstorming, I'm like, who could play Nick Viall? I was like, wait, I think I know the guy. So, you know, he had a lot of fun with it, and he was very cool to let us jab at The Bachelor a little bit. So
I have to ask, Oscar Isaac, the running joke about Oscar Isaac, was that in the script, or you guys were
Oh yeah, no, that was totally scripted from the beginning. And it's funny because, you know, were you able to see the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So at the end, when she's like, oh, is that Oscar Isaac in First Class? And so, you know, we wanted to block it a way. And one of my producers has sort of like dark curly hair. And we wanted to have this shot with him, like putting his, you know, suitcase in the thing. And the producers are like, we can't even like intimate that it might be him. And there were so many like legal things we kind of had to like dodge, you know? But I think the way that it is fine. And I think people don't walk away thinking like, oh my God, it might be him. It's like, we know what's happening there. And it's like a nice moment between these two girls. She's sort of passing the baton. But yeah, that was totally scripted the whole time.
Most excellent. And Halston herself, tell her about working with her. I followed her career for quite some time now. And I do know she's a very funny person.
Yeah, it's funny because she's obviously beautiful, and that's like the first thing you can tell by looking at her. But what I didn't know is how funny she actually is. Her timing is just so great, and she brought so many funny ideas to the table. I think her physical comedy was really funny, and I think, you know, during the table read, the writers and I just kept looking at each other and just being like, what? Like, we didn't know we had this like comic genius sort of like in our midst. So it was a really wonderful surprise to get to see Halston in this role and get to see her sort of like do the comedy as big as she did, because she made us laugh all the time.
Most excellent. Now I'm gonna throw this out at you, because it's one of those things. It's a changing industry and changing times, and it's shameful that a rom-com film like this, you know, 5 years ago would be in the theaters. Could you talk about that, and why like rom-coms still deserve a chance? You know, what we call mid-budget movies, something like that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I went through my own phase of like, this needs to be four-walled, and this, you know, when I made my first movie, I think it mattered more to me about being in theaters. But I look at my own sort of like relationship with theaters, and I can't say that I'm running out to the theater all the time. And there's certain movies, because like, you know, I can be a film snob and I love movies. So like there's certain movies, of course, I want to see in the theaters. But like, I don't think rom-coms need it, you know? And I think the beauty about rom-coms is sometimes that you're like snuggled up with your loved one or your best friend, and you're eating popcorn messily, and you're talking to the TV, and you have a blanket over you. And sometimes I think that's the environment for something like this. So like, I never went through a moment of disappointment, because I feel like it's getting the release that's going to reach the most people. I mean, I don't want like it to be in theaters just to say it's in theaters and have it do lousy. I mean, what's the point of that, you know? So I'm excited about, and I know this sounds political, but it's not. Like, I actually think there's certain movies that can thrive in this environment. Namely, I would say rom-coms and horror. Like, horror does not need a lot. You know what I mean? Like, so I think those two genres, if it's a war movie, or if it's, you know, Oppenheimer, of course, go to the theater. If it's a musical, if it's Barbie, if it's, you know, if it's like a Marvel movie, of course, go to the theaters. But I simply don't think that you need to. I almost would prefer people to just like be in their pajamas watching this movie, because I feel like that's the type of movie that it is. You know.
You're certainly right. This is a cuddling movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Melissa, I'm going to just leave with one more thought, and I know a lot of people going to ask you that question, and you probably thought about it. Who is your celebrity on your celebrity?
So I would say right now, because I've obviously been thinking about it. I've been very into Taron Egerton lately, from Rocket Man and from Blackbird, and I just think he's a tremendous actor. I went back and started watching like the Kingsman movies. There's just something appealing about him, and he seems like he'd be a fun guy to hang out with. So,
well,
and my husband knows about it, so it's okay.
there we go. There we go. That is the right answer. Well,
of course.
Melissa, thank you very much for carrying this conversation. Everyone should watch the list. I mean, I was laughing from beginning to end, so it is terrific.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for your time.